Want entertainment designed just for you? Then check out customizable streaming TV from Xfinity. It makes your life simple, easy, awesome.
Xfinity gives you customizable streaming TV options. Enjoy the most free shows anywhere on any device, and even access your streaming apps right on your TV with X1. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today to learn more. Restrictions apply.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings, the NFL, football, yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Purple Podcast. Matthew Coller here, and as we preview Vikings and Bears, a huge NFC North matchup, joining us is author and high school football coach Bobby Peters, who has written the third down manual books for the Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams last year, so we've had him on a number of times to talk about those, but he is this year studying the Chicago Bears. So first of all, Bobby, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. So let's start right off with the Chicago Bears offense. Last year, they are awful, and their head coach is from the 80s, and it just seemed like when they played the Vikings, they could not move the ball at all with an antiquated offense that wasn't working and very few weapons. And you just don't see this type of change very often. We saw it with the Rams and Jared Goff, and now I feel like we're seeing it with Trubisky, where all of a sudden there are weapons everywhere and a smart head coach in Matt Nagy. So why don't you start off by talking about how Matt Nagy has maximized some of the skills of their very good weapons, Cohen, Robinson, Burton, all these guys that they added.
So the Bears, like you said, the Bears have added quite a bit of talent between last year and this year with the additions of Anthony Miller through the draft, Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, and Trey Burton through free agency, and obviously Tariq Cohen had been in place. But those five in particular are guys that Matt Nagy will feature in the passing game. He has multiple different ways to feature each one of those guys, and it comes down to, obviously it depends on the game plan and who they're playing, but throughout a game he can choose who he wants to feature on a concept and try to isolate them in a one-on-one matchup. And he's shown through these first 10 weeks that he's got ways to get each and every one of those guys the ball and make them the focal point of Mitch's progression, assuming they have a one-on-one matchup, because all five of them have shown the ability to win those one-on-one matchups throughout the season so far.
So how much of the Kansas City offense did Matt Nagy bring to Chicago? Clearly we've seen Andy Reid, who is a genius and will finally, I think, start to get his due as we go forward this year, because the Chiefs have a shot at going to a Super Bowl. But Andy Reid deserves, to me, Hall of Fame level status as a head coach. He's done it in multiple different places now where he's been super successful, especially on offense. And Matt Nagy comes from Andy Reid and comes to Chicago. But, we see this effect all the time with Belichick people who go other places, say like Detroit, and are a truck fire. So why is it that Nagy has been able to have some success, and what has he brought from Kansas City?
So simply speaking, from a schematic standpoint, first off, he's brought basically the entire system. Matt's been around Andy most of his coaching career. You can definitely see the schematic, schematic similarities. I always like to play, a little running joke I have inside my own head is every Sunday, when I watch the games, I'll play play calling bingo in the Matt Nagy, Andy Reid system. So I've got a square for a shovel pass. Once they get into the red zone or they get into a short yardage situation, they'll throw a shovel pass, or, if they see single high coverage on early downs, they'll call 4 verticals out of trips. There's certain things that schematically are similar between the two coaches, and, you can definitely see that. You can definitely see that on a weekly basis. Now, from a philosophy standpoint and what Matt has done, initially you talked about, the John Fox era, and how different the Bears offense is. Nagy brings the biggest difference. Obviously, they added those skill players that we mentioned before, but you can add all those guys, but if you don't know how to use them, it's a moot point. But the biggest thing that makes it all go is Matt's confidence and his aggressiveness to take shots downfield. Number one, his confidence in his quarterback to take those shots and to believe in him and to essentially let him control the game. Last week against Detroit was a perfect example. The Bears started off the game going no huddle, and Mitch directed them right down the field, and they stuck with it throughout the game. And Mitch performed very well in it. You could see him making checks at the line of scrimmage, checking in and out of different plays, and he played very well. And, last year under John Fox, that just wasn't the case. I mean, the Bears, without the stats, the Bears were one of the highest percentage teams of just running the ball on first and second down last year and putting Mitch in third and longs. And you can't count on converting third and longs to move the chains. And a lot of times, if you get stuffed on a 1st and 10 run and your philosophy is, not trusting your quarterback and being aggressive with him, you're basically putting yourself behind an 8-ball.
So something that's really interesting to me with how they're playing is how much the ball is distributed to everyone. That from Tariq Cohen, Taylor Gabriel, Trey Burton, Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, they have between 24 and 37 catches, all of them. And all of them average somewhere between 11 and 14 yards per catch. And all of them have touchdowns. And that's something that you just don't see. I mean, especially with the Vikings, where it's Thielen and Diggs, a huge gap, and then everybody else has a little bit of a distribution here or there, but they get the ball to everyone. So tell me, who is the most dangerous of that group?
Well, all 5 of them are definitely dangerous in their own right. If they're, and that's the beauty of what Matt's doing right now is once he figures out who's getting these one-on-one matchups, he'll figure out ways to make them the first read in Mitch's progression to make it easier on Mitch. So he knows essentially pre-snap, okay, they're in the coverage we talked about. I've got a one-on-one matchup. I'm basically going here and trusting that his guy can win. Last Sunday, Allen Robinson had himself a day. He was definitely the most dangerous guy last weekend. Coming off the injury that he had and coming back and playing as well as he did. I mean, it's awesome to see that he's fully healthy going into this big game against Minnesota. But what the coaching staff did is they aligned him in the slot quite a bit this week. So they gave him, so essentially they'd run, so on the first drive, they ran so they put him in the middle of a trip set and they ran him on a slant route. And Allen is a tremendous route runner too. That's something that can't be overstated, is his ability to win press matchups without necessarily creating a bunch, using a bunch set or using a pick play. He'll just beat his guy. He doesn't need the help on that. And that's something that, when you align him in the slot and you give him a two-way go, that it makes him very, very hard to guard. And so that first drive, he ran that slant, catches it. He didn't quite score. He took it down to the goal line. But the very next drive, the Bears line up in the same formation. He releases off the ball. He kind of sells that slant route. He takes a jab inside. The defender's playing him with inside leverage. So the defender jabs with a step as well. And at that point, Allen just ran a vertical route. The play was a more vertical concept, and he'd gotten leverage, and the Lions were in a single high coverage. I believe it was cover 3, and Mitch threw the ball right on time to him. And it's just last week he really enjoyed getting those one-on-one matchups in the slot.
All right, so tell me about Trubisky and how they use his wheels. Do they use the RPOs that were supposed to take over football but really haven't? I mean, isn't that funny? Like, the whole offseason is spent talking about RPOs. This is where it came from, and this is how it's going to take over football, and it definitely hasn't. But you still see them, and this is a team that I see on tape running them from time to time. But I feel like with Trubisky's ability to run, they actually have the option, unlike Nick Foles, of him taking off when they do RPOs.
So the Bears, they're definitely in the top 5. I think they might be either second or third right now in the league, according to Pro Football Focus, for RPO usage. And they'll feature the RPOs on, first down, second down, when they're ahead of the chains. There's one in particular that they'll feature. They'll line up in a trip set, and they'll line up Trey Burton to the other side of the field. They'll line him up probably 2 or 3 yards from the tackle. And kind of a lot of coaches refer to that as a nasty alignment. And what they'll do is they'll put the back, whether it's Cohen or Howard, usually Howard, They'll line Howard up to the side of Burton, and they'll run an inside zone scheme, and they'll read that defensive end. So pre-snap, Mitch has a bubble screen typically to the trip side. He'll have Trey Burton on about a 5-yard speed out. So pre-snap, if he likes if he has numbers to the bubble side, or if he has leverage on, or if he sees single high coverage with a corner off, he might throw that out route to Trey Burton. If he sees those pre-snap, that's a decision he'll make, and he'll essentially give a token fake to Howard and throw it out. Or post-snap, what he does is he'll read that defensive end in a true zone read fashion. And that's been the case. Maybe once or twice a game he'll pull that and keep it. I don't think this Sunday he did. I remember he had a big play, a key first down the other week doing that. So that's part of where his once in a while where his runs come from. But the majority of his runs come from when he's in the pocket and the defense covers his first or second read and he takes off. Now this is where Mitch has grown so far this season. Early in the year, if his first or sometimes his second read wasn't there, he'd be taking off early, and that was definitely the case against New England. Now last week he was keeping his eyes more downfield. He was working the third, sometimes the fourth read in his progression, so he didn't scramble nearly as often. And at times when the Lions did cover all of his receivers, he's athletic enough where he can find that lane and take off and usually outrun linebackers to get to the corner and pick up first downs. That's been huge for the Bears on third down so far this season.
Now, what I was looking at was the game against the Jets, because I figured the Jets would have a lot of similarities to the Vikings in the way that they handled third downs. And they did. They run a lot of the zone blitzes or the zone dog blitzes and those type of things, fire zone blitzes, where the Vikings will send an extra guy and then drop someone back into coverage. This is the best way I can describe it. Maybe you've got a better way. But send someone back into coverage to try and confuse the quarterback so he doesn't have an initial read, and then the pressure will often overload from one side, right? So the Jets did that a lot. They confused him a couple of times. They forced inaccurate throws a couple times. I think that the Vikings are going to turn that stuff up against Trubisky. After last week, they used their front four to completely get after Matt Stafford. But I think with how Trubisky likes to get the ball out quickly, they're going to use a lot of this type of zone blitzing stuff.
If I were defending the Bears right now, that's what I would be doing as well. Mitch and even the coaching staff too at times they've struggled to handle the blitz. And the Vikings, like you talked about, their fire zones. I mean, I'm an offensive guy, but when I turn on Vikings tape, and I go back to their Week 1 matchup against San Francisco, because I like studying Kyle Shanahan, so I put that film on a few weeks ago, and they won that game because of a couple of their different fire zone calls that they had at the right time. They sacked. I think they might have had a sack strip on Garoppolo. They got a pick six off of one of those pressures because they got a guy in his face and he couldn't quite step into the throw. So if I were the Vikings, I would be dialing those up early and often. So what makes those so getting a little into the nitty gritty of the fire zones. So a lot of West Coast offenses in the NFL, they'll refer to their 6-man protection as either 2-jet or 3-jet protection. 2-jet meaning the running back will be on the right, 3-jet will put him on the left. So what that does is it's basically a half-man, half-slide protection. So the center will slide away from where the running back is lined up. And that's essentially, so there's three offensive linemen on that side, and then the running back will fill in if there's any blitzer on the other side. So the two linemen opposite of the center slide, they're in man protection, and then the back will pick up any blitz. So what makes the fire zone, so basically the offense has three for each side, a balanced 6-man protection. So what makes the fire zones that Mike Zimmer uses so effective is he'll line up essentially, in a standard 4-down look. So he'll have 2 linemen on each side. He'll bring 2 blitzers to one side. So he's overloading one side with 4 defenders, and he'll drop, like you talked about, he'll drop one of the defenders on the other side, one of maybe the D end or sometimes even the D tackle. So he'll have 4 rushers to one side and 1 to the other, and he can drop 6 into coverage. So in a fire zone coverage, you have 3 underneath defenders and 3 defenders over the top. So it's basically a true cover 3, but with one of the middle hook defenders coming on the blitz. So what that does is those 4 on one side, that outnumbers the offense. And offenses do have ways to bring that guard over or bring the back over. They have different checks that they can use to combat these fire zones. But a lot of times with the way the Vikings disguise them and when they bring them, it's just, it's too late by the time that they recognize it. The guard sees it or the back sees it. Now you got pressure in the quarterback's face. And, the guys on NFL Matchup, Greg Cassell and Matt Bowen, they did a really good piece on the Vikings fire zone blitzes. I believe it was against the Cardinals. I can't remember the other team that they
maybe
used
the Jets. They used them a lot against Cardinals and Jets.
Yeah, it might have been the Jets, but they do a really good job breaking that down with the tape, and it's the quarterback just has no chance. I mean, the way they disguise it as well, it's definitely something that the Bears coach. And honestly, with the way things have been going, I'm kind of excited to see how Nagy how he game plans for it this week, because he knows that it's something the Vikings do quite often. So, I'll be interested to see what he has in his game plan. And actually just one of my personal favorite plays against the fire zone is out of a trip set. So the Bears use trips quite often, as most NFL teams do. So what I would do to combat the fire zones is you put the back to the single receiver side and you run the dragon concept to that single receiver side. So what you're doing is you're getting the ball. The quarterback's gonna catch it and throw it. So he's not really taking a drop. He's gonna catch the snap, stick his foot in the ground. So what that gives the offense is it gives them a quick read for the quarterback on that flat defender. Now the defense splits one of their hook defenders, and the other hook defender is going to have to commit to the trip side because there's a third receiver over there. So the offense will get a very simple 2-on-1 on the flat defender, and with a free releasing back going to the flat, it's a really easy way to gash the defense with that slant route coming behind it.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up, because I was watching one blitz that the Jets sent, and the running back, I think it might have been Cohen, he, instead of staying into block, he sort of snuck out, and it wasn't on a drag route, it was more of just like, maybe a little just like stop or whatever, hitch a couple yards or whatever, just find some space, but he was wide open, and Trubisky didn't see him because I think the pressure was in his face, but if he had just checked the ball down to Cohen, who they thought was going to stay in and block, and sort of forgot about him, he would have had like 20 yards. And I wonder if that would be one way to do it, is sort of make it look like they're going to block a certain guy and then slip out behind him and try something like that. But I also wonder, after watching Chicago and New England, now New England gave a lot of looks like they were going to send fire zone blitzes and then dropped out of them. There weren't very many times where New England blitzed on third down. They were usually just giving him that look to sort of get in his head or not show what they wanted to do and then drop back into zones, and that seemed to mess with Trubisky a bit.
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
Yeah, no, he definitely, with how he struggled with the blitz, I think showing it and then backing out is another good way to, like you said, to mess with him. It's, it definitely, the Vikings will definitely be bringing pressure, and the Patriots did at times too, but like you said, if you've brought pressure a few times and you show it, maybe you can get the offense, into a check of some sort, something where they have to get out quick, and, if you drop out of that, you're able to trap, you can play cover 2 behind it, you can have the corners trap those flat routes and have, that flat. So like that dragon concept I was talking about, so I probably should have defined the dragon concept too. So what it is, it's basically a slant by the outside receiver, and then in this case, it would be a flat by the running back. So against one of those coverages where they drop guys out, and if they play cover 2 behind it, now you've got the corner squatting on that flat route, and you've got that, what the quarterback thought was the flat defender. Mm-hmm. Instead of committing to the flat, now he's sitting in that slant window. So a lot of times what happens in that case is the quarterback will see that guy sit in the slant window, so he'll dump it off to the flat without even looking, assuming that the corner's, playing off because it's a fire zone blitz. But instead he's playing cover 2, so now he's sitting there. And usually that's an easy way to get your running back hurt. If you throw that out there against the trapping corner, I mean, he can light him up with that ball in the air. So that's definitely a good compliment to teams that like to blitz a lot too, is to back out of them.
So what has been your overall analysis of Mitch Trubisky? Because I look at his numbers and some of the grades that he gets for throws from Pro Football Focus, and he's got 2 outstanding games, but they came against Tampa Bay and Detroit. And so you can count on Minnesota not being like Tampa Bay and Detroit. And the rest, there's a lot of ups and downs from Trubisky, where he's done some nice things and he's done some not nice things. And you mentioned the numbers against the blitz are not very good at all in how he's handled it. What do you think about the progress he's made from year 1 to year 2?
So there's definitely been a tremendous amount of progress from year 1 to year 2, and even so far this season. I mean, it's the Detroit game last week was hit by far his best game. I know his numbers weren't as good as what they were against Tampa, but I mean, his going through his reads, his footwork, his timing. I mean, throwing the ball on time accurately. I mean, it was a complete game. It was a complete game from him. And usually once or twice a game, especially in the red zone. I know one time he tried squeezing the ball into a tackle eligible that was double covered, and then I think against Seattle one time he kind of ran around in the pocket and just kind of threw it up into the end zone hoping someone would come down with it. But he's usually good for 1 or 2 boneheaded plays like that a week. But last week he didn't have it, and he put everything together, and it was awesome to see that. But there's definitely he's definitely early on in the season adjusting to the new system and the new reads and the progressions, and there's definitely been growth, like you said. So that's as things move on, obviously he probably won't have as good of a game against Minnesota just because they'll probably scheme some more pressure, ways to force him off his spot, and naturally too, they're just Minnesota has a better defense, so that's one that's something that'll affect him as well.
When you look at the Bears as a legitimate contender, how do they sort of stack up to you? Because I know that you love watching the Los Angeles Rams, and we know that the New Orleans Saints are good and seemingly getting even better week by week. Are the Bears in that conversation for you?
So I wouldn't put the Bears in that same level with New Orleans and LA quite yet, but with a healthy Khalil Mack and a healthy Allen Robinson, they're certainly a very good football team, and on the right day they could definitely beat those teams. But at the end of the day, it comes down to how well Trubisky plays and how well he takes care of the football and makes plays down the field. And last Sunday against Detroit, he was able to do that. Can he do that week in and week out? That's remained to be seen. So, but no, they're definitely capable. They're definitely talented enough. I mean, defensively, they've got skill at all 3 levels of the defense, and offensively, although the offensive line hasn't done real well in the run blocking department, they've definitely kept Mitch pretty clean most of the season. So, not too many holes on the offensive line. And then obviously we talked about the skill position talent already. It's a major upgrade for them since last year.
So let me ask you one more thing before we wrap up, Bobby. Is just the offensive trends. I mean, I sort of made a crack about RPOs, and I wrote about bunch formations that I thought that people would follow along with the Rams. I've seen an uptick in play action. I think that more teams are using play action than they ever have before. Even if it's only a couple of percentage, it's still higher than in the past. So what has been, from your film study, the sort of the trend of 2018?
So definitely more of the same. Teams are, the Rams are still doing their thing with bunch sets. The Saints and Sean Payton, their offense has been exploding. I mean, that's par for the course for those guys. They're still doing most of the same stuff. They're kind of more of a West, a West Coast system as well. The Bears, it's been pretty interesting. The Bears, obviously they're a West Coast team, and it's kind of funny that a lot of the perception on the Bears offense and Mitch Trubisky is that they haven't played well this year, but they find themselves sitting towards the top in points scored, and I think Mitch is in the top 5 in certain categories. But offensively, they're a West Coast system coming from the Andy Reid tree, but just the ways. The biggest overarching theme with NFL passing games is their ability to, like we talked about in the beginning of this podcast, is their ability to find and create one-on-one matchups early in the quarterback's progression, make it easier on these younger quarterbacks, and having guys in those positions that can win one-on-one matchups. And if defenses can't figure out ways to disguise brackets on these guys, or disguise different zone combinations they can play, it's really easy for offenses to take advantage and get big plays.
So I guess I thought that more teams would copy Sean McVay than they have. I noticed the statistic that they run play action 40% of the time almost. I mean, it's like 38%. I mean, that's just incredible. That's at least 10% more than the next highest team. And I guess after all the success that they had, maybe teams kind of get stuck in their ways or think that their system is the best one and don't do as much copying and stealing as we think. But the motions that the Rams use and then the fake jet sweeps, maybe I see a little more of that, but not as much as I really expected to.
Yeah, I mean, it's, obviously they're comfortable with it. They do it. There's a lot of, the more successful NFL coaches, Andy Reid and, Matt Nagy too, they're good examples. They'll use the jet motions. They'll run occasionally a jet sweep or two. They won't fake the motion as often as the Rams do, but they'll use it and they dabble in it because they see it as an effective way so if you got the jet motion going one way and then you're running a run play the other, the second and third level defenders, they have to freeze and they have to honor that jet motion and bump. So what that does is it allows your linemen up front to get stronger double teams and move forward. I mean, even at the high school level, we use that on a lot of our base runs to create that. And like you said, I mean, if it's not a part of their system, it makes a lot of sense to be added. It's a simple adjustment. A lot of times too, even the Rams, they'll run, breaking down these games, they maybe run the jet sweep once or twice a game, maybe, but they'll fake it 15 to 20 times. It's one of those things where defenses, they have to commit to it because you've done it a couple of times. You've done it just enough to be dangerous. But what they're really trying to do is freeze those second level defenders and just run outside zone to the weak side of the formation with Todd Gurley. And it just really helps their offensive line get up to that second level then.
Yeah. Getting some of the guys sort of out of the box. I noticed that they did that to the Vikings where Anthony Barr would be lined up close to the line of scrimmage, but when they run that jet sweep action, then he has to follow that receiver and moves basically right out of the way. And the lineman could get their push and Gurley could get room. And that's why it's one of the reasons that I wouldn't say that Todd Gurley is an MVP candidate, because I think he's being helped a lot in a lot of different ways. I would lean more toward the way that Jared Goff has actually executed that offense. But for some reason, Bobby, doesn't it seem to you like Jared Goff just doesn't seem to be getting a whole heck of a lot of credit for how good he's been? I mean, do people think that it's all Todd Gurley, it's all the weapons, it's all Sean McVay and not him? Because I saw it right up close in person. The man can throw the football.
Yeah, I mean, when I turn the tape on, to me, Jared Goff is definitely a top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now, maybe even a top 5. And, when we're assessing quarterbacks, we're looking at their ability to throw on time and to be accurate. And Jared Goff does both of those things very well. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, a lot of times he's got guys open, that some of those other teams, that struggle offensively don't quite get because their scheme's not as good. But, he, even with that being said, I mean, he makes some tight window throws. I mean, that Saints game, a couple of the throws that he had down the field, I remember one in particular to Brandon Cooks, and even one that was incomplete that he threw. It was a corner out to one of his tight ends, but I mean, it was just a perfectly placed ball. And those are some of the harder throws, those deep sideline throws that with the defender draped on them, where you gotta drop it in a bucket, a real tiny bucket down the field. We call those bucket throws. Mm-hmm. And, he's able to make those throws. So yeah, I mean, to me, he's a top 10, maybe even a top 5 quarterback in the league right now.
Well, I don't think any Vikings fan would argue with you on that after seeing what they did, to the Vikings earlier this year. Bobby, always awesome stuff, breaking it down for us with the X's and O's. If you want to read some of Bobby's work, the Philadelphia Eagles 2017 third down manual, also the Los Angeles Rams 2017 third down manual. I know it's from last year, but you will learn a lot about offenses, and then look for the upcoming work when you're breaking down the Chicago Bears. So thanks a lot, Bobby.
Thanks, Matt, and bear down this week.
And thank you all for listening to the Purple Podcast.
Want entertainment designed just for you? Then check out customizable streaming TV from Xfinity. It makes your life simple, easy, awesome.
Xfinity gives you customizable streaming TV options. Enjoy the most free shows anywhere on any device, and even access your streaming apps right on your TV with X1. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today to learn more. Restrictions apply.
A lawsuit in the devastating Camp Fire. I'm Jackie Quinn with an AP News Minute. A group of residents who've lost loved ones and homes from California's deadliest wildfire in Butte County are suing Pacific Gas and Electric. They're alleging the utility failed to maintain power lines. Some believe that sparking wires may have touched off the blaze that killed at least 42 people. This resident returned to find out that he's lost his home and all of his belongings.
Now I have to reinvent myself all over again and start over creating a life, basically.
A group of some 350 Central American migrants has reached Tijuana, Mexico, ahead of a giant caravan. They're being taken to shelters in the city. The vote recount continues in Florida's disputed Senate and governor's races. Also, a judge in Georgia is allowing a recount to continue in Gwinnett County. One of the purest gems in the world, the Pink Legacy Diamond, sold for $50 million at auction.
The shape is absolutely beautiful, and the weight, 19 carats.
I'm Jackie Quinn.